best definition of forgiveness I've heard is forgiveness is letting go of the hope that the past can be changed.
Today I've got Sondra Imperati with me, who is a life coach, an executive coach, and a courage connector coach. Sondra, what does that mean?
We all have those truths that we know deep down inside, but that are buried. It could be personal, it could be career, could be anything. And part of what I do is to ask the questions and create that environment to allow you to go deep, to have the courage to get to those truths.
Yeah. And I want to get into your story because you have a really unique story. Today, we're going to focus on, I think, for people who are in leadership positions, how can they show up and be their authentic self? Because what works for one person doesn't work for everybody. And also, how can they show up in a conversation when they're trying to maybe have difficult conversations with employees or even with clients? I think that's going to be our focus today. But talk a little more about who are you working with now? Who are you helping? What are they getting stuck with?
So my clients are primarily executive women in very high profile positions who are managing it all in life, at home, at work, and even with parents and caregiving. And they have lost sight of themselves. They're overwhelmed, overworked. They are doing constantly. And in that doing, they have forgotten who they are. They move from thing to thing and trying to care for everyone else around them.
And is it fair to say you were that person as well?
Absolutely, I was that person. So I understand better than anybody else. So I've had a corporate career for the last 25 years. I was married and had to make the very difficult decision to leave the marriage, the job, and the home all at the same time. And I wrote about that in the New York Times bestseller, Eat, Pray, Love Made Me Do It. I was one of the essays that was featured there. So, I have cared for elderly grandparents and parents. So I understand what that's, and I've had to hold it together for my team when I was drowning myself.
Help put us in that place, thinking about women and our executives that are feeling stuck. But what was happening? And I guess, how did you make that decision to finally leave? What did it take to make that transition?
So I left my corporate role about a year ago now. It's actually the anniversary of that. So it's been a year, which is hard.
Now, congrats. That's amazing.
Thank you so much. And I got the role that I thought I had always wanted. My best friend said to me when I became a VP and a corporate officer for a blue chip brand, said to me, "I've known you since sixth grade. You've worked all your life for this. I'm so happy for you." Then I got it. And it was nothing like what I thought it was going to be. And so what happened is I started to evaluate in myself what were my truths and what were my values. If you can get clear about your values and what that means and what it is that, how that expresses itself, that is something that changes your life, quite frankly. And it's one of the things I did for myself, but I also do with my clients. We get very clear about what it is that are your values and what you hold dear. And I was finding that for me, it was being away from the husband that I love and adore, that I worked and waited so long to have in my life, my second husband, Michael, who is my soulmate. Second thing was the work that I wanted to do. This was not the work. I was doing wonderful for my team. I was doing great things for some of my internal clients, but I wasn't doing anything to help the customer.
And just so we know, Sondra, what was the job like? What was your,
working,
in marketing your brand, right?
Yes, I was working as the lead for brand marketing, customer experience, and research for a very large healthcare payer brand.
We're talking about like top level
Yes,
executive.
I was a corporate officer,
Yeah.
but I wasn't able, there were so many political things getting in the way of me being able to impact the end result. And that was, and to make healthcare better, which we all need right now. And how could I be the head of customer experience and not be true to that? So that was part of the decision making was family based, but it was also, was I where I wanted to be living my truth, which is a value I hold very dear.
You made the decision to leave. The interesting thing is you've been in a corporate career though for a long time, right? This isn't like
Yes.
your first one.
No.
I guess what happened along the way in previous roles? Did you have an inkling that maybe this wasn't the path, but yeah, I'll keep staying on the path because I feel like I should? Or was it just something later in your career that sort of surfaced?
I love that. Life is a journey and it's
Yeah.
not a sprint. And when I look back on the course of my career, I am a reformed people pleaser, number one.
Yeah.
So I've worked very hard to not do that anymore and to put that someplace else. My boundaries were not the greatest. I was putting into my people, but they always kept saying to me, you don't have to hang on to too much. You can delegate. Trust us. And in those earlier parts of my career, I had trouble with that. So things happen sometimes, as painful as they are. I can see the trajectory. I was raised by a single mom, and my father in the 70s died by suicide. That was the thing, the seminal moment that shaped me and gave me the strength to have persistent courage being in that situation. I married at 24. I was in that marriage for 20 years. So in my mid 40s, realized that this was not what I wanted for the rest of my life. I was very lonely and alone.
Yeah.
So leaving the home, leaving the job, leaving the marriage,
Yeah.
and having to live on my own for the first time in an apartment, that was not easy for me. So did all of that, started a new life, met my amazing husband, Michael, and also became a mom as part of that and a step parent to my two wonderful children and to five beautiful grandchildren. So there's incarnations that nobody's life is a straight line.
So you decided to go out on your own and you've got this different job now, helping women and others who are in a similar situation. I guess let's talk about, so for people who are feeling stuck, maybe similarly, I want to get to how to handle these conversations, but where do people start? Like, where did you start and how are you helping people just even get started?
So let me take a little bit of a step back first. The name of my business is Persistent Courage, and that was named for a reason. It was after a verse by Maya Angelou where she said, you can be generous enough, you can be kind enough, you can be loving enough. But without courage, persistently and insistently, the rest of the virtues don't matter.
And so help me, this sounds a lot like therapy in a way, like a process to get there. Where does the therapist cut off and where does your work start?
So there are certain things from a therapy perspective that I will not touch. But getting in touch with who you are, I've done that work myself with coaches and with therapists. I have done it with others, and it can't help but go there because, the reason why you may act a certain way in any given point is because of where you've been and what you carry.
I think everybody struggles with that to some degree. I mean, maybe for some others, it's really getting in the way of something they want to do. And maybe for others, they just aren't as aware of it. But even for myself, like, I feel like I've got like multiple personalities depending on the situation that I'm in. So it makes sense to really understand what's happening here inside of me that's getting in the way.
Sure. So the one thing that I think we lack nowadays, because again, we're so focused on the screen, scrolling. We're so focused on the to-do list. We've let go of curiosity.
Mm.
And so I get to be that objective observer that can be curious and ask questions. It was something that my team used to say to me in corporate. You come in and you just love asking these questions to really understand what's behind the thing.
Sondra, maybe we can do a little bit of a live version of this on me if you're open to it.
I would love to. That would be
Okay.
awesome.
All right, let's help get me unstuck a little bit and see if I can show up a little more authentically for my team and clients. Where do we start?
What is it that makes you feel like you're not showing up authentically?
I'm also a recovering people pleaser, and I'd say I'm a recovering micromanager. And back in the day, I think I was put in charge of a lot of people at a very young age and I was in that command and control, got to prove myself. We're a small company, so there is elements of I'm very involved in the work. And there are moments where I struggle to see there's a project happening and I see issues where there's certain things aren't going the way that I think maybe that they should go. And so I feel like I need to get involved, but I'm concerned with, I don't want to take something away from somebody and make them feel like they're losing their project.
So I want to take you back a little bit because you talked about, and I just want to replay back to you what you said to me, that you have felt like in the past you were a people pleaser and you micromanaged because you wanted to deliver.
Yep.
And so you think you've gotten better, but you're not sure.
I think I've gotten better, but.
And now you are in a situation where you have this business and you are trying not to micromanage. You have that gut instinct that people may need to get out of the way or things need to go on a different track, but you're not quite sure how to do that without people feeling disempowered. Is that accurate?
And maybe hearing you play that back, I could clarify one thing. I think
Go ahead.
I do think there's a time when I need to show up as the director and say, for this project, we're small companies. This is the role I'm going to play, and this is the role person 2, 3, and 4 teammate are going to play. And I think when I'm sometimes struggling is when to put on that director hat.
Okay.
And when to take it off.
Okay.
So that might add some nuance.
Okay. Excellent. So I want to now take you back to, when did you feel like you were being micromanaged in your life? Can you think back to that time when someone might have done it to you?
Yeah, I can think of little instances or big instances.
Okay. Would you mind telling me about that?
For example, a creative project where back in the day, I was a video shooter and an editor, and maybe I was told, hey, this is the job, you're the person, but then somebody was almost telling me all the buttons to push and almost how to do my job versus clarifying the outcome and the challenge. And then maybe when they weren't happy with the outcome, it wasn't a big high level conversation. It was more of a what to do to fix it and especially since I'm also the big brother, another little bit of background, who doesn't like to be told what to do. I'm also a business owner. I've worked, lots of things here. The writing's on the wall. Those are moments where I've probably felt like I was micromanaged.
Okay.
Told how to do the job instead of what the job is.
If you had to name one thing that you could do to improve in that area when you want to jump in, I want you not to think with your head. I want you to think with your heart and how, as a person and the person that was micromanaged at one point in time, what is one step you could take before you want to maybe jump in?
I think one thing, and I feel like I've even read this in your Persistent Courage articles. One thing is maybe even just to stop and think through this a little bit and have a little bit of a strategy, almost write out what I think needs to be said before I just start talking.
Great.
And to slow down, because my natural tendency is to go fast, accelerate. Things aren't happening the way that they should be, so that we need to pick up the pace. But I think it's the slow down to speed up approach that I probably struggle with. That's one thing I think I could do, is to slow down and to think before I speak.
See, and that's fabulous.
Yeah.
And look, I didn't have to tell you that. You got there yourself. And
Right.
and that is just a mini way how we go about this coaching process. And you can see that depending on what the topic is, the other question I always like to ask people when they say to me, I'm so mad at so-and-so because of this and this. The one question I also ask is, how much of that is really true? So, and that's part of the reason why I asked you, remember what it was like to be micromanaged. What do you wish would have happened in that situation? And so how could you work differently? And again, you did first of all, thank you for being vulnerable enough to do that.
Yeah.
Because that takes great courage.
I think that's so important that you're able to bring that experience of being in that specific role as an executive, that experience that you have as the corporate, as that role. And if you're helping people in that same role, it'd be hard to totally trust somebody who hadn't had that experience.
Yes.
It was in their corporate role. Like TMI, like in my previous marriage, I've been remarried and found my soulmate. But in my previous marriage, going to couples therapy, I remember we started with somebody who was young and hadn't really been married before, and we're asking them to help me with marriage counseling. And you're like, I was always kind of, I don't think that they have the expertise here, even though they might be a really wonderful question asker. I'm not trying to liken you to a therapist, but what I am trying to say is, it's one part, can you guide people? Can you ask people the right questions? It's another part to have lived it too, though.
Yes.
Experience it. I think that's really important.
Honestly, the times that when I've worked with others and with my team, especially in a corporate environment, when I could show up and say, I understand how you feel because I had the same thing happen to me. And I'm curious, what's going on with you? Is there something outside of here that's influencing this? Tell me why you showed up that way. What happened in that situation? They start to bristle because they don't like where it's going because you're triggering them. I'd like to stop for a minute. I can see that this is hard.
One of the things, again, we're not therapists. I have to keep on putting that in there. But one of the things I did learn from a couple therapists who I really respected, actually, and who had been married before, and I know this is maybe some practical knowledge. Maybe other people know this and I'm just new to it, but there is an action, right? Somebody said something to you. Then there's a feeling, and those are two different things.
Yes.
And then there's a reaction, right?
Yes.
And if you could somehow put space in between those three things, okay, the action just happened, they said something. Obviously, there's a trigger. You feel something. Okay, that's a separate thing.
Yes.
Okay, before I react, I get to choose what my reaction is.
Yes.
If there's space in between that feeling and that reaction, I think what you're advocating for a lot is, in order to have a strategy to communicate, you have to think.
Yes.
In order to think, you have to have a little bit of time.
Yes.
In order to have a little bit of time, you have to be a little bit of aware of what's happening.
Yes. We get into those situations where it's a constant back and forth. And you don't feel like there's time to do the planning for the difficult conversation. It's just there and it's meeting you right at the door.
Yeah.
Tune into your body and see what you're feeling. If you feel your heart racing, if you feel your blood pressure shoot up, if you feel like you just want to come at it because somebody said something that triggered you, hold your tongue for a minute. You can pause even in that moment. And it's hard to do. Silence is a beautiful thing. It's okay. People aren't comfortable with silence.
Not comfortable.
It's your friend. Because once it's out, you cannot take it back.
True.
And honestly, There are those career limiting moves sometimes, and God knows I've done it when I've been in situations in my career where somebody just got me and I zinged it back and I was like, what did I do? So we're all human beings. That's the whole part of this too. We're all human beings. Nobody's perfect. You have a 50-50 shot at any given moment of getting it right. It's all part of the journey and growth.
Yeah. And I love that. I think the forgiving yourself thing is really important. I think one of the things that I do, because I do make so many mistakes,
We all
where I'll leave you're right. We leave those conversations, right? Those tough conversations didn't go the way we wanted. Maybe, like you said, I said something. I can think about times right now where I said something. I was like, that's not how I wanted to show up. God, I'm like, that's not a good leader, but all right, tomorrow's a new day.
Yes.
And so like being able to go through that process and get comfortable with that process, I think is really important, because otherwise you spend all this time regretting and avoiding, and I'm not even going to be a good leader, so I'm just not going to even deal with it. But if you, like you said, forgive yourself and then show up with some hope, it's so hard to do because we just want to be great.
And here's the other part of that. When those things happen, it leads to such overthinking. You feel it in your body. Like you just feel horrible. And then the fear of what if I'm not great? What I want to be a good leader and I didn't show up that way, and that shame spiral. It's just as hard for you as whatever might have come out of your mouth to the other person. Best definition of forgiveness I've heard is forgiveness is letting go of the hope that the past can be changed.
That's pretty powerful. But I want to pivot and ask totally random questions. What is a song that you've got on repeat? You always go to, you rock out in the car when nobody's looking. What's your go-to song?
It's My Life by Bon Jovi.
Totally rocks. What is a word or phrase that we should stop saying, we should no longer use in the workplace?
Ooh, that's a good one. Ooh. Yes, but.
Yes, but.
Yes. Say what you mean. Yes, but means I don't really agree.
Just disagree. Say no.
That's right. It's okay to say no.
Sondra, this is great. Thank you so much for sharing everything. And people need to check you out. Where can they check you out if they want to work with you?
Sure. They can check me out at persistentcourage.com, my website. You can sign up for a free session there. I gift my first session to everybody. You can also visit me at Instagram at Persistent Courage as well.
Awesome. All right, Sondra, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
Eu fango.